Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is a little different. We're not looking back at yesterday's headlines. We're trying to project ourselves forward into the next big wave of,
Right.
well, of everything.
Geopolitical and technological disruption, yeah.
Exactly. We're framing this deep dive as a kind of summary of the future, specifically for you. We've been completely immersed in this highly detailed, really comprehensive analysis of the forces that are set to dominate the year 2026.
And this analysis comes from the international observer Mookie Tenenbaum. It's important to say that up front.
Yes. So we're moving beyond just, simple predictions. We're trying to analyze the tectonic plates of power,
Yeah.
the underlying dynamics that are already shaping the world you're going to be living in.
That's the critical distinction, isn't it? If we really want to understand 2026, we have to find the gravitational center. The sun, as the analysis calls it. Yeah, the single point around which all the major political and economic planets are going to orbit. And our mission today, really, is to understand that dominant figure. Because according to Tenenbaum's very detailed report, that figure is unquestionably Donald Trump.
Okay, let's unpack this. I mean, that immediately sets a very specific tone for the entire year, doesn't it?
It does.
So let's start right there. The U.S. political landscape and how this central figure, whether he's actually in office or just dominating the news, defines 2026 for literally everyone else on the planet.
Well, the analysis is pretty unflinching about this. Trump is the geopolitical sun, period.
And what does that mean in practical terms?
It means every major event, a new policy, a global crisis, a shift in the economy, it's all going to be viewed through the immediate lens of his actions and his reactions. The focus is just so intense.
So it's more than just being president.
Oh, much more. The analysis suggests he operates with a level of personal power that you usually associate with presidents of, smaller, often less stable nations. The analyst actually used the term third world presidents.
Wow.
And that's not a comment on the country's economy. It's about the absolute personalism of the power he wields. It's all about him, the individual.
And that personalism, it shows up in these specific, almost unbelievable proposals that were cited in the analysis, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of things like proposing to name the Kennedy Center or even a naval ship after himself.
Exactly. That's the perfect example. It's a performative use of power. It borders on the monarchical, which for a modern American president is, well, it's historically shocking.
But it's strategic.
It's deeply strategic. What's really brilliant about it from a political standpoint is the sheer attention vortex it creates. The analysis has this fantastic term for it, the blonde hole. In the original Spanish, it was agujero rubio.
Agujero rubio, a blonde hole. That's very evocative. Why that specific phrase?
Well, think of a black hole, right? It has this immense gravitational pull that sucks everything in.
Right. Nothing escapes. Not even light.
Exactly. He doesn't just attract attention in the normal way. He pulls absolutely everything. All the media focus, all the political energy, all the ideological arguments towards himself. He creates a vortex with such a focused gravity that nothing else can escape its pull.
It's not just attracting attention. It's distorting the entire political reality around him.
That's the perfect way to put it. He distorts reality. If you compare this to, say, previous Democratic administrations, they often tried to mask U.S. power. They'd use diplomatic language, talk about multilateralism, act like everyone's an equal partner.
Even when they weren't.
Of course not. But Trump just throws that mask away completely. He uses raw American power openly every 5 seconds to get what he wants. And this tendency, this public wielding of extreme leverage, is only expected to intensify as the election cycle heats up.
And that concentrated power, that vortex, it leads directly to his other key political role.
Yeah.
The great distractor.
Yes. His secondary, but maybe equally vital function. When problems pop up at home, and they always do, he can just successfully shift the entire country's focus away from that difficult reality and onto whatever spectacle he's creating that day.
It's like a political magic trick.
It's a magic trick of incredible scale. Think about the comparison the analysis offered. If someone like Putin needs a distraction from, say, a failing economy or political dissent, what does he do?
He has to invade Ukraine.
Right. A massive, bloody, resource-draining, years-long war. By contrast, Trump's methods are almost, I think the word used was minor and bloodless.
Things like seizing an oil tanker or sinking a drug boat.
Exactly. The source material called them incruentus, which means they aren't controversial enough to cause, widespread moral distress, but they're flashy. They demonstrate power, they dominate the news for a few days, and they require almost no long-term investment.
And that makes a lot of sense from a resource perspective. But what's the deeper insight about the function of this distraction? Is it really just about covering up a scandal we already know about?
See, that's where the analysis from Tenenbaum gets really insightful. It's not necessarily about covering up a known crime. It's not like, oh no, they found the documents quick, sink a boat.
Right.
It's about keeping the public so occupied, so overwhelmed, that they don't have the time or the mental energy to go looking for the inevitable, complex problems that exist inside any massive government.
So it's a preemptive defense.
It's a highly effective preemptive defense mechanism. He doesn't need to know what specific problem is brewing in the Department of Agriculture. He just knows that if the media and the public really start digging into the complex realities of government, they will find something. The distraction prevents that scrutiny from ever starting.
And we can see this exact strategy playing out in the economic sphere.
Yeah.
The analysis used a really specific and memorable example for this, the affordability crisis in the U.S.
Yeah, specifically the high cost of meat.
Right. And this ties into a broader cultural theory that the analyst offered.
It does. Tenenbaum puts forward this fascinating idea about why meat prices might be spiking. He suggests it could be tied to a widespread, subtle abandonment of what he calls woke lines.
Woke lines,
Meaning cultural ideas associated with collective ideals. The push for veganism, say, or the collective adoption of electric cars, things like that. Politically motivated consumption choices.
So the theory is that if a big chunk of the population decides to reject that political correctness all at once,
You get a sudden, unforeseen spike in demand for traditional goods, like a good steak. The market just isn't prepared for it, and prices shoot up globally.
so the rising price of a steak isn't just an inflation problem, it's a cultural symptom, a backlash almost.
Precisely. And regardless of the actual economic cause, these internal frustrations, high grocery bills, combined with the chaos around immigration or border scandals, these are exactly the kinds of real-world pressure points that Trump can extinguish with his Rubio effect. He just lights a bigger, brighter fire over here to distract you from the economic cracks forming over there.
Okay, so that's the sun. Let's turn our attention now to the planets. The figures who are revolving closest to him, the internal politics of his solar system. Who are the key players here, and what is that dynamic looking like for 2026?
Well, first, you have to talk about the huge anomaly. The one person who doesn't seem to follow the normal rules of the solar system, Elon Musk.
Right. The analysis really highlighted him.
Yeah, and Tenenbaum pointed out that Musk is the only person who has openly clashed with Trump and, quote, emerged very well. That's a massive deviation from the norm.
What does that tell us?
It tells us Musk has a unique kind of power, a combination of incredible wealth, direct media control through X, and his tech clout. It gives him a kind of political immunity that almost nobody else in that world enjoys. He's his own center of gravity, in a way.
And then below Musk, you have the messier internal ideological battles. The analysis focused on the strain coming from figures like Nick Fuentes.
And this is a major political headache for the entire Republican establishment. I mean, Fuentes is openly a neo-Nazi and an anti-Semite. He promotes these deeply fringe ideas, and he's aggressively demanding that the U.S. abandon all support for Israel.
Which creates enormous internal frictions.
Huge friction. You have rising stars like J.D. Vance suddenly getting put under this intense scrutiny because they don't condemn Fuentes quickly enough or clearly enough. And that tension is even more volatile when you remember that Vance's wife is Hindu, an identity that Fuentes has also publicly disparaged. It's a very ugly, very complex conflict of values and political positioning.
And Trump's role in this.
He seems perfectly content to just let it all fester.
And yet, amid all this chaos and infighting, the analysis points to one figure who seems to be operating with maximum effectiveness, Marco Rubio.
Rubio is presented as exceptional, really, just lauded for his incredible energy. He's described as basically doing two jobs at once, principal security advisor and foreign relations minister.
Which, given the state of the world, is more like a triple full-time job.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And the source material specifically noted this 1.5-hour press conference he held. He was in total command, and he made sure every single journalist in that room got to ask a question. He's operating at a level of efficiency and composure that is the complete opposite of all the chaos surrounding him.
But doesn't that make him a threat? If he's that competent, doesn't that challenge Trump's control?
You would think so, but here's where the strategy comes in again. Rubio is smart enough to immediately deflect any talk of a rivalry. He explicitly states that J.D. Vance is the next in line for the 2028 nomination.
Taking himself out of the running, at least publicly.
Exactly. He removes himself as a current rival.
Yeah.
But here's the critical observation that Tenenbaum made. Trump actually benefits from this constant, grinding, internal struggle for succession.
How so?
The rivalry between Vance and Rubio, or someone like Ted Cruz announcing his 2028 run ridiculously early, all this internal competition allows Trump to maintain absolute control. It's classic divide and rule. Everyone is so focused on battling each other for position in 2028 that nobody is focused on challenging the sun itself in 2026.
Okay, let's shift our gaze outward, away from the internal U.S. chaos and toward the major global hotspots. And it's kind of surprising that Rubio confirmed Ukraine is the issue Trump has spent the most time on, given all the isolationist talk.
It is, but it remains a deep, deep quagmire. And the analysis suggests that the coming year isn't going to lead to a victory for either side, but to a freeze.
Freeze? What enables that?
Money, primarily. Europe's recent commitment of, I think it was 81 billion euros in loans is crucial here. That gives Ukraine financing for roughly one more year.
Which takes the immediate pressure off the U.S. to keep sending heavy military aid.
Exactly. It buffers that domestic pressure in the U.S. for a quick, chaotic withdrawal. It buys everyone time.
And in the meantime, Russia's strategy is
No.
it's brutal.
It's barbaric and it's strategic. They're sending waves of missiles, 700 at a time, to systematically destroy Ukraine's electrical and heating infrastructure. And they're doing it in the dead of winter. We're talking about temperatures dropping to 20 or 30 degrees below zero.
It's a tactic designed to inflict the maximum possible civilian suffering.
Yes. The goal is to force a political capitulation.
But Putin's entire strategy here is based on a very risky assumption about the Ukrainian people.
It's a deeply flawed assumption. He hopes that if the public suffers enough from the cold, the dark, the lack of basic services, they will eventually force Zelensky to surrender the Donbas region.
But the analysis suggests that's not going to happen.
It's not. The reasoning is that both Russians and Ukrainians are what the analysis calls stoic peoples. They have this deep historical memory of enduring immense hardship from World War II to the Holodomor. They are culturally conditioned to endure rather than to surrender territory they see as theirs.
So, if victory is impossible and surrender is off the table, what does Tenenbaum predict is the long-term outcome?
Not a peace treaty. A peace treaty solves the underlying political problems, and that's not what's on the cards. The most likely outcome is a Korea-style ceasefire.
So an armistice.
An armistice, exactly. A cessation of active fighting that just holds indefinitely. Like in Korea, it could last for 70 years, but it resolves absolutely nothing. The border stays militarized, the armies stay poised, but the daily bloodshed stops.
But the real danger, the analysis suggests, comes after the fighting stops.
Yes, because a ceasefire allows Russia to immediately shift its focus. It can rearm and reposition its forces against its non-NATO neighbors.
Who are the most at risk?
The immediate focus shifts to two key high-risk states. First is Moldova. It's stuck right between Romania, a NATO member, and Ukraine. And crucially, inside Moldova, you have the separatist region of Transnistria, which is already occupied by Russian soldiers and tanks.
A built-in foothold.
A perfect foothold. Once Russia is freed from the daily grind in Ukraine, the pressure on Moldova will intensify dramatically, probably under the pretext of protecting Russian speakers there.
And the second risk is Estonia.
Now, Estonia is a member of NATO, which should offer protection, but it's a small country, and about 40% of its population is ethnically Russian.
So even if a direct invasion is off the table, Russia has levers to pull.
Absolutely. A rearmed and, frankly, vengeful Russia will use everything short of war. Disinformation, economic coercion, political agitation, all under the guise of protecting its ethnic kin. The pressure on these states will be immense once the quagmire is formally frozen.
All right, let's move to the Middle East. The analysis predicts no immediate major explosion in the Palestinian-Israeli sphere itself, even with the complexities of managing and rebuilding Gaza. Instead, the focus is shifting.
Yes, it's shifting to a new strategic dynamic that is actually far more volatile. And what's fascinating is Israel's really unexpected strategic move.
Which is?
Seeking a specific military and political agreement with Greece and Cyprus.
Greece and Cyprus, who are direct rivals of Turkey.
Exactly. Historical rivals of Turkey, which is a major NATO member. And you have to remember, Turkey, under President Erdogan, is a strong supporter of Hamas, and Erdogan himself has a profound personal dislike for Netanyahu. Relations are basically severed.
So this new alliance isn't subtle. It's a deliberate provocation aimed right at Turkey.
It's a very calculated risk. It signals a major realignment for Israel, away from its decades-long focus on normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. The core conflict seen brewing by Tenenbaum, the one that displaces those older flashpoints, is this potential military and political friction between Israel and Turkey.
And what does that do to Saudi Arabia's role in the region?
It diminishes it significantly. Saudi Arabia, which used to have all this leverage as a key negotiator for regional stability, is predicted to lose a lot of that power. The whole strategic dynamic is shifting to this new friction point in the Mediterranean, centered on things like gas resources and naval dominance.
Okay, finally, let's talk about Taiwan, because this is where the analysis makes a remarkably firm, almost provocative prediction.
It's as firm as it gets. China will not invade Taiwan, period. The analysts staked a 100% certainty on this, said it was pure geopolitics, not fate.
100% his.
Yeah.
That's a bold claim. What's the logic?
It's a cold, cynical logic.
Yeah.
China will keep up all the provocative actions, sailing ships through the strait, flying planes through their air defense zone, maintaining its very public timeline for a 2027 invasion.
But it's all a bluff.
It's all a bluff.
Yeah.
The analysis humorously suggests there's more chance that Taiwan invades China than China invades Taiwan. The threats are for internal consumption and external manipulation.
So what's the purpose of maintaining a threat that you never intend to act on?
The real effect is economic and psychological instability. You have to remember, Taiwan controls the world's supply of highly specialized chips, the 5-nanometer and 3-nanometer chips that are absolutely essential for all current and future AI development.
So it's the perception of risk that matters.
It's all that matters. That perception creates volatility in the global stock market, where AI and tech companies now represent a colossal 17% of the total market value. China gets to create constant global financial unease without bearing the catastrophic cost of an actual war.
And the analysis argues that the U.S. government actually benefits from this continued uncertainty, too.
Yes, and this connects right back to that theme of political unity. Why would the U.S. government want to definitively put an end to the China threat? The U.S. needs a powerful external enemy.
Russia isn't enough anymore.
Russia is too weak, too bogged down in Ukraine. They're not a credible unifying antagonist for a country the size of the U.S. The German philosopher Fichte argued that an external enemy is necessary to unify the inner life of a nation. The U.S. needs China as a strong antagonist to justify defense spending and unify its own domestic politics.
So dispelling the China threat is not a good business.
Not a good business for either side. The tension is strategically useful for both Washington and Beijing, as long as it remains a perpetual, well-managed bluff.
We've covered the known geopolitical chessboards pretty thoroughly. Now let's pivot to the blind spots. The conflicts that are brewing, that are massive in scope, but are largely being overlooked by international media. The first one is Sudan.
Sudan is a huge one. It's a massive, ongoing, and frankly, tragically overlooked civil war. And its location is what makes it such a high-stakes, destabilizing threat.
It's on the Red Sea.
It's on the Red Sea, it's enormous, and it's right next to critical trade routes. An escalating civil war there could easily engulf the entire region, maybe drawing in Egypt or Ethiopia.
We already saw with the Houthis how even minimal actions in that area can cause chaos.
Exactly. The Houthis use low-tech assaults on shipping, and it was enough to cause global trade prices to spike and force major shipping lines to reroute all the way around Africa. Now imagine the economic fallout from a full-blown civil war in a country the size of Sudan. It's a genuine risk for global instability that is just not getting enough attention.
Okay, turning to Europe. Here, the conflict is entirely internal, a kind of gradual structural decay that Tenenbaum diagnoses as a crisis of abundance.
That is such a deep psychological diagnosis of the European condition, isn't it? A crisis of abundance.
What does it mean?
It means that when Europe is unified by an external threat, the Cold War, the 2008 financial crisis, it tends to pull together. But now they've achieved so much wealth and so much order, and only the Ukraine war is serving as a kind of limited unifying factor. Without a major threat, the internal divisions are just flourishing.
It's a tragedy of success.
It really is. They've solved so many of the big existential problems that now they're fracturing over national self-interest, identity politics, and these esoteric policy disagreements.
And we can see that fracturing happening in real time with these political blockades.
Precisely. You have nationalist and populist parties, especially in places like Slovakia and Hungary, that are actively obstructing the EU's consensus-based decision-making. And then you have these deep intra-EU disputes, like the fight between France and Belgium and other members over how to legally use frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine.
So the prediction isn't war.
No, not war. The prediction is a slow, structural disintegration, a withering of inter-European cooperation where the EU just becomes less and less effective, less than the sum of its parts.
And this internal decay, it feeds directly into one of the most fraught social issues across the continent, the cultural assimilation crisis. The analysis points to the UK and France in particular.
Yes, and it frames the problem not as an economic one, not about job competition, but as a crisis of coexistence.
And that's a vital distinction.
It's the distinction that often gets lost in the public debate. The problem isn't about jobs. It's the social friction that comes from having large minority groups that are not assimilating to the host culture's norms, its values, its fundamental civic way of life.
And that friction becomes critical when members of those minority groups start to gain localized political power.
That's the flashpoint, when they become mayors of important cities in England or France. Because then, naturally, they seek to elevate the norms of their own culture to be equivalent with the host culture. And that creates this inevitable political and social friction. It's a fight over the identity of a shared space.
And the analysis gives a very stark prediction for the UK.
It does. It says the prime minister is extremely unpopular, which makes early elections very likely. And if the government falls, the ultra-right Reform Party is heavily favored to win, maybe even with an absolute majority.
Which would lead to very big change.
Very big change. And Tenenbaum described the state of England with this very powerful negative Spanish word, picada.
Picada, what does that convey?
It suggests something is truly corrupted, rotten at its core. It's not just about bad policy. It implies a profound institutional failing, a pervasive sense of decay, where the fundamental social contract feels like it's dissolving. The rise of the Reform Party is a symptom of that perceived decay.
But the analysis ends this section with a really important demographic counterpoint. It challenges that fatalistic idea that immigrant population growth is some kind of unstoppable bomb.
And this is a vital nuance that applies globally. The analyst used the specific example of Israeli Arabs. For decades, they were cited as this inevitable demographic force that would change the country.
Right, higher birth rates.
Much higher. But as their economic conditions improved, as they became more integrated into the economy, the second generation started having significantly fewer children. Their growth rate actually dropped below that of the local Jewish population.
So economic integration is a counterforce.
It's a powerful natural counterforce to high birth rates. It shows that the demographic future is often determined more by economic reality and opportunity than by some kind of cultural fatalism.
Let's shift to the immediate electoral future. 2026 is full of them, starting with the U.S. midterms. They are often seen as less important than the presidential race, but the analysis says they are extremely determinant.
They are arguably more determinant of day-to-day governability. The entire House of Representatives and a third of the Senate are up for renewal. It's a huge structural realignment.
And given Trump's current wafer-thin majorities, losing even one of those chambers would create a massive governability problem.
Massive. It would mean the opposition immediately controls the entire legislative agenda. They could use their committee power to launch endless investigations, block all of his appointments, judges, cabinet members, and just halt everything. It forces the White House into permanent crisis management.
And historically, the odds are just stacked against the party in power during the midterms.
Absolutely. The historical trend is that the party not in the White House wins. It makes Trump's position very difficult. The only real exception in recent memory was George W. Bush after 9/11, when a huge national crisis unified the country behind him.
So absent a 9/11 level event,
He will likely lose his majority in at least one chamber. And that impending legislative battle explains why the U.S. political focus is going to turn entirely inward starting in midsummer around July or August. Everything becomes about that November showdown.
moving south, 2026 looks like it's going to be a year for a rightward tilt in Latin America, starting with Brazil.
Lula's re-election chances are looking very precarious. The projection right now, if the dynamics hold, is a potential 60-40 loss.
And who is the main challenger?
The governor of São Paulo, who has built a very strong anti-crime record, and that is absolutely key. Crime is Brazil's #1 national issue. It outweighs everything else. A loss for Lula would firmly align Brazil with this regional right-wing trend.
And in Colombia, the shift is projected to be even faster and more decisive.
Yes, the current left-wing government there is projected to be swept away. in the May elections. They had disastrous municipal election results, in some key areas only getting 10 or 15% of the vote.
And that's a bad omen for the national election.
It's a very reliable precursor to a national electoral disaster. So Colombia is seen as certain to shift decisively toward the political right.
And back in Europe, that underlying political instability we talked about could force snap elections, which would just accelerate this nationalist shift.
For sure. In the UK, the Prime Minister's record-low popularity makes triggering early elections highly likely. And, based on current polling, the ultra-right Reform Party is poised to potentially win an absolute majority. That would be a shockwave across the continent.
And it's not just the UK. Spain's government is also on shaky ground.
Very shaky. The socialist government there is struggling to hold its fragile coalition together. They've suffered some historic losses in regional elections. It all suggests that the governing coalition could easily collapse, which would trigger snap elections there as well. So yeah, 2026 looks politically volatile everywhere.
We've established that the political world is dominated by this predictable chaos of Trump and the failure of these large institutions. But now, here's where it gets really interesting. The economic and digital world, according to the analysis, is about to be consumed by something entirely new: the agent revolution.
This is the true shockwave. This is an economic reorganization on the scale of the invention of the internet itself.
And the analysis says that for AI in 2026, we haven't seen anything yet.
Not even close. The coming disruption is the revolution of the people's personal AI agents. To really get it, we have to go back to that analogy of the specialized travel agent.
Right, a human travel agent who knows your very specific, nuanced preferences. You want a sustainable hotel, you hate 3-stop layovers, you need gluten-free options.
Exactly. The AI agent takes that personalization to a whole other level because it learns everything about you. It knows your exact trouser size, your specific aversion to cold weather, your precise chocolate preferences, your budget thresholds, because it lives digitally alongside you. It is completely, intimately personalized.
And this personal AI agent, which the analysis calls your cybernetic hand, it does two things that are completely disruptive.
Yes. Two simultaneous functions. First, it anonymizes you. When your agent goes out into the digital world to buy something for you, nobody selling that product knows that it's you, the individual, making the purchase.
Which immediately destroys the most valuable asset in all of e-commerce.
Yeah.
Your personal data.
It completely nullifies it. E-commerce today runs on tracking your IP address, your cookies, your purchase history, all to build a profile of you. The AI agent makes that impossible. The seller only knows they sold a pair of Dockers, size 35. They have no idea who bought it.
And the second function is the one that causes immediate deflation: the automated auction.
This is the price killer. The agent conducts a rapid-fire digital auction instantaneously. It says, I need a men's blue button-down shirt, size large, ethically sourced, deliverable in 48 hours. And it instantly collects and vets 200 offers that meet those exact specifications.
It buys the single cheapest one.
The single cheapest one. It's a massive leap in market efficiency. It eliminates all the friction and opacity that allows price differences to exist today.
And this mechanism, the analysis says, will cause prices to fall terribly, and it will destroy the business models of today's e-commerce giants: Amazon, Mercado Libre.
Their entire power structure is flipped upside down. Amazon's most valuable asset is its data. Knowing what you bought last year, knowing what to suggest you buy next, that becomes functionally useless.
Because they don't know who the agent is buying for.
They have no idea. They can't target you with ads. They can't give you personalized recommendations. The relationship between the seller and the buyer is now mediated by this anonymous, efficiency-driven force.
And this will just completely flatten the modern supply chain. I mean, why would a factory in China sell its products through a dozen different middlemen to get to Mercado Libre?
They won't. Why would they? When that factory can sell directly to millions of personal agents, each buying on behalf of an individual user, the traditional intermediary just dies. The whole complex web of logistics, retail, and advertising that exists today is built on a lack of perfect information.
And a reliance on these huge centralized aggregators like Amazon.
Exactly. Once every individual has their own highly informed, anonymizing, auction-conducting agent, that centralized system just collapses. The intermediary doesn't disappear. It simply becomes, as the report says, Tenenbaum's personal agent. This decentralized, personalized, efficient shift is the major economic revolution of 2026.
Wow, we've navigated an extraordinary amount of ground in this deep dive. I mean, we've covered the Trump-centered political world defined by distraction and these internal power struggles.
To stalemates in Ukraine and Taiwan, which are actually strategically useful for the big powers.
Right. And the rising friction within Europe, which is rooted in this strange crisis of abundance. And then, maybe most pivotally, this coming economic upheaval driven by personal AI agents.
And if you try to connect all of that to a bigger picture, there's a single unifying thread that runs through all of it. Politics, geography, technology. It's the death of the large general intermediary.
Say more about that.
Well, politically, the analysis suggests the external enemy is manufactured to centralize power around the sun, Trump bypassing the traditional party intermediaries. Geographically, the big supranational intermediary, the EU, is withering because of internal nationalist blockades.
And economically.
Economically, the agent decentralizes power completely. It puts control and data back into your hands, bypassing the massive corporate intermediaries like Amazon that dominate commerce now. The general middleman is being squeezed out of existence everywhere. That's the overarching key insight of Tenenbaum's analysis for 2026.
That is a powerful connection. So the analysis of these predictions ends the year with this dual focus. This structural internal decay happening within nations, which is being countered by this radical autonomy through individual technology.
A very strange paradox.
It is. In a world where your AI agent is handling your economic life with perfect, anonymous efficiency. But your political unity relies entirely on manufactured external threats. What happens to genuine collective decision-making? What happens to a shared civic experience or the traditional marketplace of ideas?
That's the unsettling question, isn't it? It's a world that's becoming optimized for the hyper-efficient, anonymous individual, but it might be incredibly brittle and deeply fragmented at the national and global level. The intermediary is dead. Long live the agent.
Something for all of you to ponder as you prepare for 2026. Thank you for sharing this fascinating and intensely detailed analysis of Mookie Tenenbaum's insights with us for this deep dive. We look forward to seeing how these dramatic trends play out.